So if you're a real estate agent and you're trying to win offers and you're finding that you always come in third, fourth, or fifth place, you're in one of those markets that's highly competitive, this video is going to be about how you can write winning offers, specific strategies, and where you can just position yourself to where that you can help your clients become the winners. So diving right in, everybody knows that and thinks that the highest price always wins. But I'm here to tell you, after tons of negotiations, it's not always about the price. It's about how the whole thing is packaged up, and then it's about your communications with the other agent so that they have confidence in you. So specific strategy number one is start with the highest price you possibly can with your client. So obviously we got to get that out of the way, right? Price usually wins, but not always. So a second strategy that you could think about employing is if you actually working with somebody who is pre-qualified for a mortgage, you can take that a step further and not only have them be pre-qualified or pre-approved, but actually have them fully underwritten. There's a lot of banks that will allow your client to become fully underwritten so that you're positioned in such a way that when you write your offer, you can state to the other agent that your clients have already been fully vetted through the process and that they're virtually ready to close. They just need to secure the property, and since they are doing financing, make sure that you get through the inspection and the appraisal process. So strategy number three is called the Escalation Clause. So it might be called something different in your state if you're watching this outside of Washington, but it's kind of like how you would set up the process of if you could buy a house with eBay. So what this is gonna allow your client to do is state that they'd be willing to spend, let's just throw out a price. Let's say it's a $600,000 house. Your clients are willing to actually throw down $650,000 if they have to. So the escalation clause allows you to protect your clients and write that you would be prepared to close by a predetermined amount over any competing offer. So let's say the house is listed for $600,000, your people are good up to $650,000, you reach out to the other agent and there's a certain level of a lot of competition, right? So you decide one of the ways that we could position ourselves really well is to say that we'd be willing to go to $650,000 and we're going to beat any other offer by X number of dollars. That's usually a field that can be filled in. What I would recommend is don't say that you're going to beat every other offer by $500 or $1,000. Make it substantial in the event that that escalation gets used. What you don't want to do is only be beating somebody else by a small amount, because a small amount in real estate is kind of the same amount. So use the escalation clause to position yourself and also protect your client, because let's be real, if somebody else is not willing to go to those terms, it doesn't mean that your client actually has to pay the $650,000. So the fourth way you can write a really strong offer is by having your client offer some appraisal gap protection. Now, they have to have the money to do this. It has to be liquid and available. But what this means is that you're basically stating to the other party that in the event that the appraisal comes in low, that your client is willing to put the difference down in extra dollars. So think about this. If you're competing with three other offers, and again, the house is $600,000, and the listing agent or the seller has any concerns that maybe this house is actually selling for more than what the appraiser is willing to see it as worth, that your client would be willing to cover that difference to whatever amount you specify. Now that is super, super powerful. It's why it's at the top of our list as one of the best strategies. So whatever it's called in your state, figure it out. Here it's called a additional down addendum 22AD. It may be different in your state, but it's the gap in the appraised amount versus what the house actually sells for. Item number 5 here for your people that you are helping is to make sure that they do not ask for any additional seller concessions. So I get it. People don't want to pay their own closing costs in certain markets. In our market, typical buyer has closing costs that are about 2.5%, maybe more, depending upon what their loan circumstances are. So if that amount is, say, $10,000, then if you go and ask the seller to cover that $10,000 and you do not boost the price $10,000 higher, well, your offer's not going to look as good as maybe the other competitors. So get your folks on the same page that you're representing, that if they have the money to cover their own concessions, that you don't go and ask the seller to pay those. I mean, put yourselves in the seller's shoes. Would you want to pay for somebody else's loan costs when you're selling your property? Probably not. Item number 6 goes without saying. Anytime you're going to secure a property, there's a deposit of sorts. And so you can make that deposit a greater amount than what is standard. In Washington, it seems like every offer that I get on one of my listings, if it's a $600,000 house, usually somebody's putting about 1% down, plus or minus, so it's about $6,000. But I do see offers come through that are like 0.5%, so it's $3,000, and I see more. And so the person who's willing to put down a greater deposit, sometimes that's a factor when they're assessing your offer, and it makes it look stronger. So I would recommend not doing a weak deposit compared to other competing offers. So if all offers are the same and one person's doing $6,000 and the other person's doing, say, $10,000, and then you've got a third person doing only $500. Well, the person who's doing $500 has already put them in that situation where it looks like they're just scraping in, and maybe they qualify for the loan and can close it, but in the seller's mindset, they are not willing to put down greater collateral. So make the offer look good. If you can, put down a decent deposit. 7th item is to make sure you understand the needs of the seller with regard to when they're going to move out of the property. So it's the closing date. So industry standard is kind of like, if you're getting financing, it takes about 30 days to close a loan. But don't assume that the seller of the property, especially if the house is occupied, they still live there. Don't assume that they're going to want to move out and they're going to want to close really fast, because sometimes this is the biggest fear of the seller, is that you're going to come in with your offer. They're not planning to move out for 6 weeks, but you want to close in 4. And then they're like, my movers aren't even coming until week 5, right? They're totally freaked out. So make sure that your agent actually understands what would be the perfect closing date and put that on your contract. Just match up their needs. This is something that gets missed all the time, and it shouldn't. You know, as long as both parties are agreeable to that time frame, let's just set it up for the perfect time frame for the actual seller. And when it comes to matching the needs of the other party with your offer, there are other things too. So a lot of listing agents want to use a preferred title and escrow company. Sometimes they actually have somebody they work with that does loans. So not that you're going to change the lender that you're already working with, but sometimes in the right setting, it makes sense for you to actually ask the listing agent, who do you work with that you really enjoy working with and that you know does a good job? Because if you can match up some of those parties, meaning you're going to use their escrow and title and maybe even their lender, that's going to make your offer look even better. So number 9, super simple. Be really studious of the contract. So have your agent actually make sure that any dates that are long for the seller, and this usually comes up with the inspection review period. In Washington, we have 10 days. It's just a blank field in there that if you don't fill in, it's 10 days. So let's make that faster, because if a deal's going to fall out of escrow, it's usually going to be at the inspection. So let's make sure that our contingencies are minimal with whatever it is we can do and still protect ourselves as the actual buying party. So tighten up those time frames. Look at the inspection, look at the title review, look at any HOA or neighborhood reviews, look at any seller disclosure, review time frames, any actual home sale contingencies that you may have, and make sure that they're a tighter timeline. And kind of in that vein, if you're trying to buy a home and sell a home at the same time, make sure that it's ready to go on the market. If you're out there and you're trying to buy the perfect house and you're competing with other people who don't have to sell their home first, make sure you're at least positioned to where yours is ready to go on the market, or maybe you actually be courageous enough to put it on the market before you find the other home. Not always something I recommend because you don't want to be homeless, but just make sure that you position it so it's very clean and you can move from one item to the next really fast. So this item is a little bit controversial, but sometimes it helps for the seller to understand a little bit about who you are as the buyer. Like, what do you love about the house? What do you love about the neighborhood? And make sure that these things are communicated through your buyer's agent to the seller so they understand who you are. Because most of these showings happen in sort of these private settings by design, because a lot of the times we do not want the buying party and the selling party getting together and talking when they're actually kind of negotiating, against each other, so to speak. And so make sure that they have an idea of who you are and why you like the home. This gets into some issues with what's called Dear John letters, where you actually write a letter and you say how much you love the property, but sometimes you start to get into some ethical and fair housing issues. But there is a way to do this through your real estate agent to where you can position your offer to look like you deserve to live there in the home and all those things. So again, very controversial, very complicated to unpack in this video, but have that be something that's on your checklist. And the last thing that we'll say here, because there's another 10 strategies here, but we want to talk about the best ones, is to make sure that when your offer is presented, that it's done professionally. So I'm a listing agent. I get offers sent to me via email. Sometimes I don't even know they're coming. And also sometimes when the email arrives, if it's via email format, there's no cover letter, there's no any kind of context in the email about anything. It's just like, here's an offer for this property. So make sure that whoever you're working with is actually positioning your offer in such a professional way, and they're reaching out to the listing agent, they're doing a lot of communications, and everything is done with the utmost professionalism, and it's not just simply an email with a link to some paperwork. Last item, little bonus item. Sometimes you'll look at somebody's house and you really love their lawnmower or their barbecue or something inside the house that's their personal property. And I see this stuff try to get negotiated into contracts. And there's a way to do this. And the way that you do this is not in your initial offer, especially if you're competing against other offers, because in the seller's view, it's like, okay, these terms are decent, but they want my lawnmower? That's kind of weird. Or they want me to pay for them to have a warranty? Just secure the property, get under contract. You can always talk about negotiations on their personal property later and work out something on the side outside of the real estate contract with those things. So if you're a real estate agent and you are wanting to win, be sure to employ these strategies. If anything here is confusing to you, be sure to comment below or reach out to be more than happy to walk you through any strategy that I unpacked here that wasn't clear. And if for some reason you are thinking that you're buying a home and you're not a real estate agent and you actually want more information, also do reach out.